I wanted to mention that if you really like the Chenrezig practice, and or if you really want to do intense purification, in November we have the Nune practice. Meaning it means abiding, the fasting, abiding in fast. But what we're fasting from is ignorance, anger, and attachment. And we also, fast a little bit from food and beverages and speaking. But it's a really wonderful retreat. We're doing 2 sets of Nune. Each set takes 2 days, and then a following morning. But if you want more information, check the website, and it's a really wonderful practice. If you like doing Chenrezig and you want to do a lot of intense purification. It's over Thanksgiving, so it's a good excuse not to go to Sorry, I'm busy over Thanksgiving, family. So, we were on verse 15 yesterday. I just read it, but I didn't really talk about it. Or talked about it a little bit. Hard to practice, fortitude knows no peer. So never allow yourself a moment's rage. And avoid all anger, and you will become a non-returner. So the Buddha said. Okay, so we talked about yesterday about the 4 ascetic practices that are involved in practicing fortitude. And that's one of the reasons why fortitude has no peer, because if you want to practice asceticism, it's much easier to, stop eating for a day or, stand on one foot or something like that, than to not respond when you're criticized or hit or ridiculed or insulted or face others' anger. Yeah. Okay, so don't allow yourself a moment's rage. Well, rage, we don't rage too often. Yeah, so that kind of gives us some leeway. It's like, well, you can get angry, just don't rage. Yeah, well, anger is anger, whether we're outraged, enraged, or raging, or whatever it is, okay? And it destroys our merit and, creates problems in relationships at whatever level it's at. Okay, avoid all anger and you will become a non-returner. So when they talk about levels of attainment for people following the Hira or Shravaka path, the first level is stream enterer, then once returner, non-returner, and then arhat. So non-returners have eliminated all malice and anger. Yeah, so that it never occurs in their mind. So that's why the reference here. Yeah, they've eliminated other things too, but the reference here is in respect to that. Okay, then the next verse, 16, is about giving up resentment. Okay, resentment when faced with, others' anger. So he abused me, struck me, defeated me, and all my money too he has purloined. To harbor such resentment leads to strife. Give up your grudge, and sleep will easily come. Oh, can I tweet that? I don't know how to tweet, but I know somebody who needs it. I know a few people who need it. That it would be so cool if he retweeted a verse like this. Yeah? Wouldn't that be cool if people in the government tweeted these kinds of things instead of what they do tweet? Okay, so we harbor resentment, yeah? Somebody abused me, they struck me, they insulted me, they did this and that to me when I was a child, when I was a teenager, when I was adult. They defeated me and knocked me down and humiliated me and destroyed my self-esteem and, everything else. And then they also took my money, and they took this and that and the other thing for me. And I'm really mad. Yeah. You have any situations like that? Nobody here, huh? Maybe a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. Because actually, nowadays, we are encouraged to be angry. Yeah. We are encouraged to be angry. We're not encouraged just to state the facts of the situation. We're encouraged to rage against the other person, be angry at them, and blame them. Yeah. As if, if we didn't behave like that, then people wouldn't believe us or they wouldn't listen to us. Unfortunately, there is some truth to that. But the thing is, we can speak strongly without being angry. Okay, so some things we definitely need to speak strongly and clearly about, but anger doesn't need to be the motivation for it. Okay, so remember, anger is a state of mind. It's not the behavior. Just as fortitude is a state of mind, it's not the behavior. So in some situations, where if you can avoid the anger, but you speak very strongly, so that people notice, that can be very effective. Yeah. So you can speak strongly without being angry. You can speak strongly motivated by anger. One creates virtue, one creates non-virtue. In the same way, we can be silent, motivated by anger. We get so angry we can't even talk. Or we can be silent and passive, motivated by fortitude, having no desire to reciprocate the harm. Okay? So remember, it's not the behavior that's the anger, it's what's happening here. Because many of us think we don't have a problem with anger because we don't insult people on tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we don't have temper tantrums. Okay, so we think, oh, I don't have any anger. I'm not like those people. But inside, there can be a whole lot of anger. Okay, and especially I think with women, we are encouraged not to show our anger, but to stuff it. And so it's easy to have anger in there that we don't even recognize as anger. Yeah. So remember, it's this mental state. Yeah. And to be very clear with anger, it's based on exaggeration and projection. So right then and there, we know that it's not a realistic mental state. Yeah. We're exaggerating the harm. We're exaggerating the importance of the situation. We're projecting motivations onto the other person that they don't have. Yeah. We project all sorts of negative outcomes from what the person's doing to us. And most of those won't even happen. Okay. But we get ourselves really worked up about things. Yeah. Sound familiar? And if somebody tries to give us some new information, when we're in that time of being very worked up, we cannot hear it. Somebody, we're upset about something and the other person's trying to explain, that what they did that we misinterpreted what they did, or that they had a completely different motivation than the one I'm projecting. But we're like this. We can't hear it at all. We're just totally stuck in our position. Yeah. It's interesting because we do nonviolent communication with Marshall Rosenberg. And it's interesting on some of his videos when he's trying to get people to talk to each other. Yeah, there's one video in particular I remember about a husband and a wife who had been quarreling about how she spends money for, I don't know, 30-something years. And she was furious and he was furious. And Marshall was just trying to get them to listen to each other. And he would ask one of them, please, he'd ask the husband, please say to me what your wife just said. And he couldn't do it. He would launch off on an attack of what he thinks. He would say to the wife, please tell me what your husband just said. Just repeat the words. She couldn't do it. She launched off on her attack against him. Yeah, I mean, that's how totally narrow-minded we become when we're angry. Yeah, can't even hear. So Marshall says if once you get the people to be able to at least hear what the other one says and repeat it, then it doesn't take very long to solve the problem after that. The big problem is getting people just to listen to each other. Yeah. So there we see right away one of the defaults, one of the faults of anger. Yeah, it just makes our mind, like concrete. Nothing can get in. Okay. So we can be angry about anything. Yeah. Somebody abusing me, struck me, defeating me, taking my money. Yeah, we can understand. But we get angry over all sorts of other things too, don't we? Yeah. You left your dirty cup in the sink. Yeah. That is indicative of the quality of our marriage and how you have never respected me or appreciated me from day one. The cup in the sink, dirty cup. Yeah, all sorts of things we get so fuming angry at. And some of them are just the tiniest little teeny things. Yeah. Okay, so anger definitely makes us suffer. Wouldn't you say that? When the thing about anger is when we're angry, we have a lot of energy and we feel powerful. So I think that's one reason why we often resort to to anger, because we actually feel helpless. And anger makes us feel falsely that we have some power. So we get angry, we threaten. Yeah. We threaten, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. We throw things. Yeah. We have a list that we never forget of everything that the person's done that we don't like since we had the last big fight. Yeah? And we pull out our list. And, you did this, and you did this, and you did this. I remember one time somebody getting really mad at me. And he was pointing out things that had happened 5 years ago. Yeah, he had just stockpiled all these things. I didn't remember half of them. And I didn't think the other half were such a big deal, but he apparently did and had remembered them all these years. And I'm sure we have things that we remember that people did to us a long time ago. Yeah. And we hang on to the resentment. We hang on. We don't want to give up that resentment because we feel like we're losing our power if we do. And yet we're actually giving our power away when we hold on to it. So I remember when I did the Vajrasattva purification retreat, how angry I was at my second grade teacher for not letting me be in the class play. This was really important stuff. You know, I had to remember it from all those years ago. I remember being angry at Peter Armetta, who I'm sure is going to show up in one of my classes sometime, for saying something anti-Semitic in 7th grade that made me flee the classroom in tears. I remember my brother, I won't even tell you what he did. But you know, we hold on to certain things. And it's ridiculous, isn't it? Totally ridiculous. The things are not happening right now. They happened years ago. They are not happening now. We are different. The other person's different. But anger concretizes the whole thing so that they are exactly the same and repeatedly do that action to us each time we remember them doing it to us. So we strengthen our resentment every time we remember. Yeah. And it's we're the only ones who suffer because of it. Yeah, the other person's doing whatever they're doing, and we're totally stuck. Okay? So to harbor such resentment leads to strife. Yeah? When we're angry like that, you know, we don't get along with the other person. That's what makes us, although I'm sure you don't do this, it's only other people who do it to you. But it makes some people say those nasty little things that we know are going to hurt somebody. You know, like how family members push each other's buttons. Yeah, that's motivated by this kind of resentment. You know, small little comments. Why are you upset? I didn't say anything. Okay? So we act out our wish for revenge. Mm-hmm. So give up your grudge and sleep will easily come. Because when we hold a grudge, we are constantly plotting in our mind how to get even, dreaming up all sorts of scenarios. Yeah? Do you do that? Yeah? Creative scenarios? Oh, you're all looking so sweet and innocent. It must be just me, you know? Thinking of all these scenarios about, you know, how I could just kind of get even and give that person a taste of their own medicine, you know, for their own good, of course, because somebody's got to teach them that their behavior is despicable. So it might as well be me by doing to them what they did to me. Yes, yeah. I want to see somebody's karma ripen so that they get what they're deserving, and I don't even have to do it. That's nasty, isn't it? Yeah. I don't even have to, you know, harm them. I'm just going to sit and chuckle when their karma ripens. Yeah. Okay. Do you have grudges in your family? Grudge holding in your family? Anybody? Yeah. My family, it's amazing. You try and make a seating chart for some family event. So difficult. This one doesn't speak to that one, who doesn't speak to this one, who doesn't. And you can't keep up with who doesn't speak to who. Yeah. And every year there's a new person not speaking to another relative. And, there's never a year when two people have made up, because when you vow not to speak to somebody again, you keep that vow. Don't you? Yeah. I will never speak to that person as long as I live. And we don't. And who suffers? And especially if you have children, if you're like that, what kind of example are you setting for your kids? Yeah. And when I look at my own family, where I said there's so much trouble making just a seating chart, you watch grudges pass, or the willingness to keep a grudge against a family member goes down from one generation to the other. Because when you're a kid, you see your parents talking badly about their parents or badly about their siblings. Yeah. So you listen to them talk this way. And then you get the idea, well, that's, how you relate to your siblings. You gossip about them and criticize them and like this. Because that's what your parents did. And they learned it from their parents. So this is also how prejudice is passed down from one generation to the next. Yeah, you see your parents talking a certain way about certain people, and then you develop that same thought, well, they automatically must be like that. Never doubting it, never questioning, never investigating. Okay. So this kind of anger, it damages our health in the long term, I think, because the whatever nervous system it is, it becomes hypervigilant, doesn't it? And you get more hormones, pulsing through your body because you have more stress and so on. Yeah. So, it's something to really look out for. It doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. Now, you might say, well, how can I let it go? Many people say that. Yes, I see the faults of my anger, but I have so much trouble letting it go. How do I let it go? Yeah. You decide that you're tired of suffering. That's how you let go. You decide, I am sick and tired of suffering from my anger and resentment and wish for revenge. Yeah. So for my own sake, I'm going to drop this because it doesn't do any good. And it only creates suffering for me and the other person. And then our mind says, this is the classic, yes, but, yeah, you know that one. Yes, but it would be so much easier if they apologized and admitted the harm that they caused me. Can't they just apologize? It doesn't need to be a big thing. Yeah, but just an apology just could ease my mind and help me forgive and let go. Yeah, just a simple, I'm sorry. Okay. So we hear a simple, I'm sorry. And what do we say? No. Yeah, sure. You're really sorry, aren't you? We don't believe them. Okay. We want a big sorry. Yeah. So it would just be very nice, you know. There he comes through the door, crawling on his hands and knees. Beating his breast. Culpa mia! Culpa mia!
Me.
Isn't it culpa mia? Mia culpa? Oh. Yeah, see, he said it wrong, so that's why I can't forgive him. So then he switches to mea culpa. I'm sure it's culpa mia. You know, and crawls on the floor. You know, like the people who are doing penance when you go to the big Catholic churches, you know, crawling on the ground, you know, weeping with regret. Now, I caused you unbearable suffering. Forgive me. Forgive me. I have so much regret. I even tweeted it. Yeah. And then we can sit there when they're so crying, you know, with regret. Well, I'm glad you finally owned up to it. Yeah. Do you want to hear my side of the story? Do you want to hear what it felt like to be me when you did that? And how much I suffered all these years? Ah! Yeah. But it's true, isn't it? Yeah. Even if it's not so dramatic, we do want them to hear our story. It is important for us that they hear how much we suffered. Okay? But when we apologize to others, we don't want to hear how much they suffered. Because anyway, they're just exaggerating it because they misinterpreted what we said. Yeah. You see, alternative facts. They exist. Yeah. So, you know, we hold on so tightly. I mean, our sense of self is so involved with, you know, hating somebody, you know, and so attached to our pain. You know, I am the person who was treated like this. Yeah. And then you look at somebody like His Holiness, who became a refugee at age 24, going over the Himalayas. We already heard one story of what it was like. Going over the Himalayas in disguise, down to India where there's viruses that never even existed in Tibet. Yeah, being called all sorts of names by the communist Chinese and even by some of the Tibetans. Yeah. And watch his culture destroyed and, you know, his people destroyed and environment destroyed. And yet His Holiness is a happy individual. Yeah. If we had just even one of those things happen to us, we would be permanently injured. But His Holiness, he is very strong, especially with some of the young Tibetans who advocate a more violent approach. And he tells them, do not be angry and do not be violent. Kind of amazing, isn't it? And even when, I remember watching an interview years ago when some journalist interviewed him and gave a very general question like, tell us about your experience as a refugee, giving him the whole, or no, it was asking that and then saying, how come you aren't angry at what happened? So the journalist was giving His Holiness a whole platform to really lay into the communist Chinese government and, really explain the situation. And when they asked him, why aren't you angry? He said, what good does it do? I couldn't eat well. I couldn't sleep well. Doesn't change the situation at all. So it was remarkable as he said this. And the journalist is like, couldn't believe what she was hearing, because she had given him the perfect platform to vent, and he didn't. Okay, we would have taken that platform, right? Yeah. So I'm not criticizing people who take that platform, but what I'm saying, because it's natural. People, if they're harmed, they want to express their feelings. But what I'm saying is, look at the difference between somebody who has control over their mind, someone who has the ability to transform the situation, and other people who don't have that ability. Look at the difference between somebody who has practiced the Dharma for a long time and the people who haven't. There's a difference. Yeah, there's a big difference. So we can understand why people want to, like in Dr. Nassar, the guy from your alma mater who sexually abused all these gymnasts. You can understand why the young women got up there. And I don't know, 200 of them or something. They had, they wanted to be able to say what they felt. And that's totally understandable, for ordinary beings. Totally understandable. But you really hope and pray they can grow beyond that. Yeah, so that your whole life doesn't get defined by that incident, and that your whole life you're not tortured by that anger. So give up your grudge and sleep will easily come.
As you were talking about His Holiness, I was wondering, would we ever have heard the Dharma if he hadn't had to leave Tibet?
Mm-hmm. Probably not. Yeah. So we never know what's really harmful and what's really helpful. Mm-hmm. Or to put it in another way, even in harmful situations, good things can emerge. Yeah. Okay, so this is something to work on in your meditation, to see if you can, just try and release that. Yeah, it happened. It's not happening now. I don't need to hold on to it.
So what's come up for me in this is, where do you find that breaking point where, for some people who have been abused, but that might not hold a lot of anger, like at some point His Holiness must have made the decision to leave, where it was not safe for him to be there.
Yeah.
So in my life, my parents went through a lot of abuse. They were amazingly, I don't know how, but they turned it around and decided that they were not going to continue that way of life with me. I'm very fortunate. But I have friends and I know people that are in situations that maybe they're not recognizing that there is a way, there is a time. You know, how can you stand up for yourself in a place that isn't anger, and also know that you've had enough?
Yeah. Well, for ordinary people, we always revert to anger to give that, because anger gives us the energy to say it's enough. Yeah. But when you have some wisdom, you don't need anger to fuel that, because with wisdom, you can see this is not working and it needs to be changed. Yeah. And so you can see that without being angry. It's possible. Yeah. In fact, if you see it without being angry, chances are you're going to have a better resolution than if you're angry. Because without anger, we can think more clearly. We can think more creatively. Okay? So I think often of situations of domestic abuse and how difficult it is, it's usually the woman who's being abused, to get out of the situation because of attachment to him, because of financial dependence, because she's supposed to be loyal. Yeah, she's supposed to be whatever women are supposed to be. So it can be very hard for somebody to say, this is enough. Yeah. But when you have confidence in your own wisdom, you can look and say, this is not working. It needs change. Yeah. This is not acceptable. I will not accept getting beaten. And you can say that the first time it happens. You don't need to wait 3 months or 3 years later. You know, if you have your values and your principles, first time it happens, I'm out of here. Yeah. But if you haven't been raised in such a way, or if you don't naturally have that kind of confidence in your own wisdom, or if you're in a situation where you're financially dependent, or if you're very attached with that gooey, sticky attachment that keeps you coming back to a harmful situation, then it makes it difficult. Yeah. So you can see that when there's Dharma wisdom, we can look at a situation clearly and know how to act, but without getting all bent out of shape. Yeah. And I can say for myself, we were talking the other day about being in big messes. And I said that for me, when I looked at most of the big messes I've been in, there were red flags beforehand, and I ignored them. And my ignoring the red flags is my responsibility. The red flags were the other person's responsibility. My ignoring them was mine. And so if I can see that and not berate myself for it, just recognize, I was blind, and then learn from that experience so that next time when there's red flags, I don't push them under the table. So that's what you call learning from your mistakes, isn't it? Yeah. And somebody can tell us over and over and over again, but like I said this morning, sometimes we have to go through that experience, and that's the only way we learn. Yeah. If we're smart, we don't have to go through the experience. Yeah. If we had to go through every single experience there is in order to learn that samsara is horrible, then we would never generate renunciation and the determination to be free. So at some point, we have to be able to learn from observing other people's experiences or from just thinking about possible experiences. That's why the Buddha outlined these different faults of samsara so that we could think about them, you know. Because if we had to go through every single misfortune of samsara to decide that we're tired of it, boy, that's going to take a long time. Yeah. So it pays to listen to the wise, you know? Wise ones like the Buddha, it pays to listen. Okay. Then, verse 17. Okay. So, I like that. This is a very nice verse. I like this. Understand your thoughts to be like figures drawn on water, sandy soil, or carved in stone. For for tainted thoughts, the first is the best, while when you long for Dharma, it is the last. Okay, so our thoughts, everything that's going on on our mind, if they're like writing in water, they're gone as soon as you write. But if you write them in sand, they'll stay around a little while, but the wind will blow them and the water will come over them and they'll eventually disappear. If you write, your thoughts in stone, yeah, they're going to be there a long time. So, in terms of our negative thoughts, our anger, our resentment, and so on, to look at those thoughts like writing in water. Yeah. So instead of repeating to ourselves over and over again what somebody did to us, it's written in water. Yeah. You might even try this, Fill your when you're doing the dishes, have your bowl, your sink of water, and write in the water, He didn't understand me. She betrayed my trust. This one stole my money. That one did that. And watch as you write it in water. And think, that's how those thoughts should be. Yeah. I want my thoughts to be like that. I wrote it in water, it's gone. But for Dharma thoughts, when we're trying to develop compassion and to recall the kindness of sentient beings, when we're trying to recall the detrimental aspects of cyclic existence, these kinds of things should be like writing in stone or writing in concrete, instead of putting a heart with, how kids do when there's wet concrete or you put your hand. Yeah. My virtuous thoughts are like writing in stone, like writing in concrete. Stone is probably better. Yeah, concrete, they might break up when they redo something. But stone, your virtuous thoughts, like look at King Ashoka. Yeah, he had carved in stone all sorts of virtuous things. that he put on pillars and tablets spread throughout his whole kingdom. And people still find them, and people know what they are. And he lived 2,400 years ago. Yeah. So our virtuous thought should be like that. It's a nice analogy, isn't it? Yeah. So I think we should actually try, write in water.
I will be audacious for a long time.
Huh?
I will be audacious for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, verse 18. So this is avoiding harsh words, which are the main condition that sparks anger. So 3 kinds of speech are used by humankind, and the victor, the Buddha, variously described. Okay? 1, like honey, sweet. 2, like flowers, true. 3, like filth, improper speech. The last of these, ishu, or eshu, get rid of. Okay. So, sweet speech, like honey, yeah. So these are words when we point out people's good qualities, when we praise them, with a good motivation, not to flatter them and get something out of them, but really with a good motivation, wanting to point out to somebody their good qualities so that they'll recognize them and will enhance them and keep going in that direction. Okay, so words of encouragement, words of praise, words that will help people who aren't getting along to become harmonious again. Yeah, so kind of talking to our friends, the ones who are so intently holding a grudge, yeah, and trying to help them see the folly in holding a grudge, or to get them to apologize, to get them to forgive, words that encourage people to go in a good direction in their lives. Okay, so those are the sweet words, they're like honey. And then true words are like flowers. Okay, flowers are quite beautiful, aren't they? When you see them, especially the ones that are right under Chenrezig Hall, the ones that Venerable Sanctum plants every year. So beautiful, so colorful. So they're like true words, okay? And in Precious Garland, Nagarjuna said that speaking the truth doesn't just mean saying what is factually true. It has to also be beneficial. Okay? So if true words are said with the intent to harm, that's not speaking the truth. Yeah. Like when we say, okay, I'm going to list out to you everything that's wrong with you. You know how it is when we get really mad. Yeah. So I'm going to speak my truth, and you did this, and you did this. But our intention is to inflict pain, to get even. So that's not speaking the truth, according to Nagarjuna. It has to be speech that's beneficial as well as true. Mm-hmm. That makes it harder to speak the truth, doesn't it? Because sometimes we just like, okay, well, I just have to tell the truth. It's all the truth. I'm not lying. Oh, I they suffer from hearing this. Okay, so true speech, said truth for a good reason, for benefit. Those two kinds of speech we should definitely practice. Improper speech, lying, deceiving others, causing people who are in harmony to quarrel, causing people who are already quarreling not to become in harmony. Harsh words, insulting, criticizing, making fun of, and just plain old gossip. That's the kind of improper speech that is like filth. When we see filth, we go, ugh. We don't want to even get near it. So, that kind of speech, when we utter it, to realize it's filth and to discard it. And when we hear other people bad-mouthing somebody else, to not go along with it. And not even stay there. Sometimes just saying, just excusing ourselves. Or if you're really courageous, saying, I feel really uncomfortable talking about somebody else this way. Then everybody else gets really quiet. And you're not criticizing them. You're not telling them they did something wrong. You're just stating how you feel. I feel uncomfortable when we talk about somebody like this. Instead of, I really like talking about my relatives like this, because, I'm tired of that.
I have heard an acronym which is THINK when it regards to speaking.
Mm-hmm.
If it's true, if it's helpful, if it's insightful, necessary, and kind. So for me, it's a good reminder when I'm just about to say something nasty. Is it really true? Is it necessary?
Yeah.
And if it's one that it's just going no, then it's no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you notice how sometimes we have this wish to vent? Yeah. It's like we're boiled up inside and we just want to vent. And then it's somehow juicy just to make that really nasty comment about somebody. But to say, and even especially if somebody else has said something about the person right before in the conversation, so easy to jump in and agree. And to really monitor the point of, is it necessary? This person has described somebody else's fault. Is it necessary for me to add on another fault? Is it necessary for me to agree with what they've said? Okay. Now, having said that, sometimes we do need to talk about people's mistakes and their faults, but we do so with a motivation to help them. Because if we don't point out somebody's harmful action, sometimes we can point it out to them and that helps them to stop. Sometimes we have to tell somebody else, and so that person will intervene and stop that person. So that's why in many cases of clergy abuse in the Catholic Church, going to the police can be a wise thing. If somebody was being abused, to tell the police. It would be nice if you could tell the higher ups in the church, But if that isn't getting anywhere, you know, and even if it is, I think now by law, isn't it? You know, isn't it? If you know that somebody's abusing, what is it?
Kids.
For kids. Yeah, so for kids, if you know. Yeah, that's not for everything.
Certain professions are required.
Yeah, for everybody, yeah. But certain professions have mandatory reporting requirements, yeah. And so, you know, you have to report it, but you do so with the motivation that, you know, somebody's doing something harmful and we need to prevent them from harming others. And we need to prevent them from accumulating more negative karma by harming others. Okay, so you're doing it also with compassion for the harmer.
I've always had this problem with, I call grocery store angry moms or dads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you're in a public place and somebody is just reaming out their children, belittling them, treating them real badly. And I've always struggled with what to say or do that would be to understand that this parent may be just at their wits' end or whatever.
Yeah.
But got any
Sometimes-
ideas on that?
Yeah, you can go up and say, "Can I help?" You know, your kid is shrieking. You know, "Can I help you?" Or I can see that you have two kids, and that one's going this direction, one's going that direction, and you're trying to shop. Can I help you? Either by watching the kids or tell me what you need, and I'll put the stuff in the basket for you. Or sometimes with the kids, you know, you go up and you smile at the kids or you do something. And
Entertain them.
some of the kids cry louder, but some of the kids, they're so shocked, yeah, that they're just quiet, yeah. I was sitting on a plane next to a mom with a baby that was crying, and I held the baby for about half the flight because the mom was just, I mean, she needed to rest. She was going crazy. And, you know, and I just held the baby and smiled at it and did that kind of things, you know. So sometimes, you know, you don't have to intercede by, do you know you're causing permanent damage to your child's self-esteem and they're gonna need to go for therapy in 10 years. No, that's not so skillful. But many of these kinds of situations, you know what works very well in difficult situations? Change the topic. Do something that's totally unexpected. Yeah. There was one lady who came here, and I wish I had recorded her stories, because she, and I can't remember them exactly, but she had so many stories about, you know, when she would see a couple fighting in public, you know, verging or things happening in public, things that she did that just totally shocked everybody and put their attention somewhere else. Yeah. I really wish I had written down or recorded her stories, but they were so creative. Yeah. And just, you know.
You have to carry some Groucho Marx glasses or something like
Yeah.
that.
Something, or, you know. Start doing somersaults, or, you know, start doing jumping jacks, or grab one of the people and start doing the polka, or, you know, there are things that totally change the energy. Yeah. I mean, every parent knows that, because what do you do when you have a baby that's freaking out? You take it into another room, and suddenly being in a different place, the baby's like, oh, what's going on? Yeah. Yeah, so that's about avoiding harsh words. Then we go into a section on diligence, or as I translate it, joyous effort. Okay, so verse 19 says, "Some there are who go from light to light, and some whose end from dark is darkness still. While some from light, while some from light to dark, or dark to light, end up thus four of these be as the first." Okay, so let's translate that into English. Okay, there's 4 kinds of people. There are people who are born in a good rebirth and create the cause to have a good rebirth. Okay, that's the first one. There are people who are in a bad rebirth and create the karma for another bad rebirth. That's the second line. Okay, then the third line, from light to dark, it's somebody who has a good rebirth, but they completely waste it by creating a ton of negativities, and so they're born in a bad rebirth, an unfortunate rebirth. Then there's, so that's the light to dark, and the dark to light is those people who have an unfortunate rebirth, but by some kind of twist of karma, they're able to have a good rebirth in the next one. So they're going from dark to light. So of these 4, best is the first. Have a good rebirth, create the cause for a good rebirth. Okay, now it's not bad if you're in a bad rebirth and then you get a good rebirth afterwards, but it's much more difficult. Yeah, because once you're born as a hell being or a hungry ghost or an animal, it's very difficult to create virtue, positive karma. So, I mean, that's why our kiddies come to teachings. We take them around stupas. We recite mantras to them, all these kinds of things to plant good seeds. Yeah, because otherwise it's kind of difficult. Yeah, once you're born in one of those realms to create the karma to have a good rebirth.
Keep them from killing too.
Hmm?
Not only just the virtue, but refraining from killing.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So that's why you see them on harnesses. Yeah, so they don't go chase the gophers and the little turkey chicks. Have you seen the turkey chicks? Yeah.